I'm Truman, the Grey Merchant. I've never done a blog/review type thing before, but I'm going to do my best. This is my belated MagicCon Chicago experience. I was fortunate enough to be chosen for the new Phyrexia grant. The new Perspectives grant. This grant allowed me to attend MagicCon Chicago. This was my first ever Magic event bigger than a single Command Fest. My first big convention since middle school, and my first time in Chicago outside of the airport. I'm including details of my entire trip, but if you're only interested in the magic stuff, feel free to skip ahead using the time codes below. In case you're unfamiliar, the New Perspectives Grant recognizes contributions that make the Magic the Gathering community more inclusive or accessible. As a recipient, I received the highest tier Black Lotus ticket and a travel stipend. I was given complete control over how I used the stipend. I appreciated the flexibility this afforded. To prepare for the convention, I kept a close eye on the website in order to stay informed. I signed up for the newsletter to receive updates, but major announcements went by without me receiving any email, so I'm glad I was continuing to check the site. An issue I encountered was that ticketed events went for sale way before any other event times were announced. They were non-refundable and in high demand, so you pretty much had to commit to them and then schedule everything else around them. I ended up getting tickets to 2 events, both to keep my schedule open and because there were some special Black Lotus events that came with my ticket. I will talk about all of those later. Another thing I looked out for was the list of artist guests, because I enjoy collecting their signatures. I brought at least one card by every attending artist who I owned a card by, plus some for a friend. My final big preparation was putting together my outfit. This was my first time doing something like this for a con. My partner helped me out a lot, which I greatly appreciate. The whole experience was very fun. I was going for a Phyrexian Mark Rosewater. I don't know if that specifically came across, but I think the Phyrexian part did. I got the flannel from a thrift shop and distressed it under my partner's guidance. My partner sewed and painted the scroll. These are molds of my actual teeth from an old scan. The metal pieces, which I lost a few of over the weekend, come from my bag of loose metal, which I've been adding to for years with a vague future project in mind. I'm glad the future finally arrived. My trip started Thursday, the 22nd of February. My excellent roommate dropped me off at the metro, which I took to the airport. My decks did trigger a TSA search, which I've heard happens fairly often. The worker was very understanding about it. A while back, I got a coupon for 100 free photo prints. I used about 20 on photos of my loved ones, then the rest on an inspirational screenshot from Revenge of the Sith. For years, I've been scattering these around. I had to take some on my trip, and started my dispersal at the airport. On the plane, I lucked out and had my row to myself. I watched Coming to America for the first time, and really enjoyed it. I did not watch the strange horror remake of Cars. I arrived in Chicago at noon. I'd passed this dinosaur many times, but never before have I been able to exit their domain. I took the train to my hotel, or attending a class virtually. As a whole, I found Chicago's public transit system confusing and poorly explained, though I recognize that I have a truly awful sense of direction. I stayed at the Congress Plaza Hotel. It had a very fancy lobby. My room wasn't quite as opulent, but it was perfectly serviceable. It did feature the landlord special. The employees were all friendly and helpful, though it was sometimes hard to find one. The primary reason I chose the Congress Plaza is that it was in easy walking distance of Chicago sites, restaurants, and public transit stations. The first restaurant I went to was Fontano's for a slice of deep dish. It was good, especially since I was so hungry, but I think I'll be sticking to regular pizza most of the time. I was very impressed with the strength of its base without being tough to eat. After that, I walked to the Art Institute of Chicago. Some might say that 2 hours isn't enough time to see everything in the second largest art museum in the country, but those people are weak of heart and mind. I speed ran so much art from all the great cultures of the world and also France. I think they were doing a tie-in with magic. They had stuff from Theros, Eldraine, the Simic, and even an Ixalan Goblin. In all seriousness, this was the most impressive art museum I've ever been to. The sheer size and diversity of cultures and mediums represented was a treat to see. And yes, I took a photo of the Ferris Bueller painting like a complete tourist. That evening, I took a train to the McCormick Center to activate my badge and pick up my items. I was a bit confused by the train system at first, but I just followed the people with elf ears, dyed hair, and Hawaiian shirts, which I think is good life advice generally. The extreme length of the hallway to the convention center was surpassed only by my excitement. I was greeted by cool statues of Watley and a dinosaur. Unfortunately, the Azorius forbade riding or climbing the dinosaur, despite the fact that it had steps and a clear place to sit. It wasn't really an issue, but over the weekend I overheard multiple people expressing confusion over the situation, which was quite funny. The actual badge activation process was straightforward, but it was a bit awkward using the convention app, companion app, and convention website for different things throughout the weekend. I thought it was odd that activating my badge on the convention app didn't permanently log me in or show the events I had signed up for. I got a whole lot of stuff as a Black Lotus ticket holder. A backpack, 2 playmats, a Black Lotus cap and bottle, 3 lanyards, a deck box and sleeves, a Betrayal at House on the Hill spin-off card game, a pen, 10 $10 on-demand event vouchers, and some packs and promo cards. It was very cool, if a little overwhelming. I ended up giving a lot of it to friends. I later traded the MagicCon Chicago pen to a Wizards of the Coast staff member for a Fibblethip eating a hot dog pen. What a strange sentence. I think the bottle looks like it contains a magical potion or poison. I've never played any version of Betrayal at House on the Hill, so I look forward to that. I'm really impressed by the backpack. It's durable and comfortable, and the interior art is really cool. I used it throughout the convention, and it's now my primary backpack. RIP to the one I've had since high school. Thank you for your service. I do have to be prepared to explain to my coworkers and classmates why there's a shirtless cowboy on my current one, though. I also started the ongoing Black Lotus sealed event. Everyone made a deck with 6 MKM play boosters, then added a collector booster each day after 2 matches. There were no set times to play. It was a very casual, self-guided experience. I built an Esper Detectives deck and managed to win every match I played. It was fun getting to know some of the other convention goers. I had many great conversations and games. Everyone I interacted with the entire weekend was very friendly. The convention store opened early for us that evening. We weren't allowed to photograph anything on the con floor. It all felt very exclusive. The store line was very long, pretty much the entire weekend. This didn't affect me since I wasn't planning on buying anything anyway. I was quite content with the merch that came with my ticket. Afterwards, there was an on-site New Perspectives dinner, joined by some Wizards employees. Gavin Verhey led an icebreaker activity that included everyone saying their favorite cards. He would point out whenever it was a card he had made, which I thought was very funny. Afterwards, we all chatted and did some MKM/Ravnica Remastered Sealed. I had a very pleasant conversation about podcasts with the Magic Story podcast, Harless Snyder. Everyone was great, and I was honored to be a part of such an awesome group. I want to give special thanks to the Wizards employee in charge of the recipients. He consistently went above and beyond at all points of the experience. Truly an incredible person who I am very grateful to. Afterwards, I took the train back to my hotel. Fortunately, another NP recipient who I became friends with was staying at the same hotel, because I would not have felt super comfortable waiting at this train station alone at night. Shout out to that other recipient in general, he's a great guy. Friday morning, I headed back to the center for the first true day of the convention. Black Lotus members got to enter the convention an hour early, so I started by getting my first artist signatures. The lines could really fill up during the day, so I was thankful for this opportunity. I wish that more artists had imposed a signature limit. Afterwards, I headed to the Black Lotus Lounge for a complimentary breakfast with special guests. One of these guests was Mark Rosewater. I introduced myself and mentioned my past videos I'd done on his work, and he remembered them, which was very touching. I asked if I would be able to interview him, and he said yes. I'd written up questions in advance, just in case, but I did not go in expecting this opportunity to arise. Mark is a personal inspiration to me as a creator, and just being able to meet him was the element of the trip that I was most excited for going in. Being able to interview him was incredible. I wanted to focus on more personal questions, as opposed to solely mechanical and set-related ones, since he gives a lot of those types of answers already. I also got the miniature flannel signed. I heard him say a few times on his podcast that he was always shorter than people expected when they met him. Ironically, he was therefore taller than I thought he would be. Afterwards, I chatted with other congoers before heading to my first ticketed event, Ravnica Clue. I had a fun time. The rules were complicated to grasp at first, since they essentially mashed together 2 games at once, but it was a fun Magic variant. I won't be doing it regularly, but I would be happy to play again. My table was great. One happened to be another Scroll Appreciator. The game's ending was very fun, fittingly featuring Finale of Glory, with an X cost of 10. Except, since this is Ravnica Clue, you can also win the game by making a correct accusation. Against all odds, another player managed to do just that. Alquist Proft would have been proud. Afterwards, I checked out the prize wall. I had seen that my on-demand vouchers had fine print mentioning the prize wall, so I asked the attendants and learned that they could be exchanged for 1,000 points each. Many people did not know this, as it was new information to everyone I mentioned it to. I didn't think my schedule had time for more events, so I exchanged my vouchers for tickets. On my first visit to the prize wall, I got a deck box, a cool Space Ballarin pen, and a set of keyword counters. Afterwards, I grabbed lunch from the Robinson's food cart. Other carts had long lines during lunchtime, but they moved pretty fast. I had a barbecue pulled chicken sandwich. It was mediocre. The highlight of my meal was when I told the table of strangers I was sitting with that I was getting up to grab a napkin and offered to get one for anyone who needed one. 4 people said yes. That's barbecue. At the same time as all this, the preview panel was going on. I was impressed by the acoustics of the venue. I was able to check out the panel from around the floor without the sound being distracting or overwhelming.
Next, I headed to a cool recreation of MKM's locations.
It represented agency headquarters and Karlov Manor. Unfortunately, I did become the manor's next victim. The area also featured a fun 3-part puzzle. In semi-clue fashion, I had to identify the suspect, weapon, and motive. For the suspect, I used a special magnifying glass to distinguish letters from markings. This was definitely the hardest part of the puzzle. I saw lots of people struggling and had to compare answers with other participants in order to finally get the answer. Next, I followed the conspiracy board string to find letters that spelled out an anagram of the weapon. Finally, I used details from 5 Ravnican case files to spell out the motive. With the 3 components, I was able to identify the full solution. Upon presenting it to an attendant, I received a certificate, a sticker sheet, and an awesome agency badge pin. I love how big it is. The puzzle was fun for its own sake, and I appreciate that it encouraged me to really spend my time in the area and soak up all the little details. Then I headed back to the lounge and had a snack and some soda because I was very sleep deprived. After recuperating and chatting for a bit, I joined the dino-sized draft event for Black Lotus ticket holders. It was composed of 3 LCI draft boosters and 1 collector booster. Unfortunately, most of my pod only drafted for value and left afterwards, but I had a very pleasant match with the 1 remaining player. I ended my day at the convention by taking a massive group photo with other Magic content creators. It was awesome to be part of such a great group. That evening was the House of Clue party, a ticketed add-on at the House of Blues. I got in through the New Perspectives program and had a fun time. I wore a suit because dressing up is fun. My favorite part was the building itself. The House of Blues is a bizarre and fascinating establishment. It's labyrinthian, and every room has unique theming and decorations. It's cool in its own right, and very appropriate to MKM's themings. It felt like the setting of a mystery book or film. The party featured a puzzle where you search the venue for giant versions of the suspect, weapon, and location cards from Ravnica Clue. You'd mark them off, and when there was 1 of each left, you turned your solution in for a collector booster. The puzzle was quite simple, but I again appreciated it for encouraging me to fully explore the setting. I definitely would not have realized how big it was if not for my mission of walking through every side room. There was also an EDM concert. That's not my genre, but the DJ played an EDM version of Breaking Free from High School Musical, which was very funny. First thing, Saturday morning, I again headed to Artist Alley. Afterwards, I swung by the Fallout photoshoot. I will say it was odd that the official cosplayer just had a normal present-day Earth gun. I realize that's probably true to the character, but I'm not sure it was appropriate for the setting. For my participation, I got a Nuka-Cola bottle cap. I gave it to my brother as, in his words, he loves that mediocre franchise. I was later given another cap in the Black Lotus Lounge for having downloaded the convention app, which I gave to my cousin. I haven't played any of the games, so I had no inherent interest in the promotional content for the game, but I was excited by the excitement around me. Later in the weekend, the Black Lotus members were given a Fallout collector booster. This was cool since it was about 2 weeks before they were released normally. The last Fallout thing was a scavenger hunt, composed of QR codes positioned around the convention floor. Scanning one would reveal a Fallout spoiler. It was underwhelming. Does it count as a scavenger hunt if there aren't any clues or any sort of objective beyond wandering around? And unlike the House of Clues experience, these signs don't stand out, and the environment wasn't worth exploring for its own sake. I scanned whenever I noticed one, but didn't look for them specifically. Next, I went to the Black Lotus Lounge for the Plane Chase Unknown event. It was a game of Commander Plane Chase with custom Plane Chase cards, themed around Chicago and the convention, such as The Bean and Artist Alley. They were creative, and it was always fun seeing what would happen next. My only criticism is I wish there was more variety, as there were 2 or 3 copies of multiple cards. Overall, I had a great time, in no small part to my great pod. The highlight was when we got the pin trading phenomenon twice in a row, which has everyone draw a card for each pin they have, and one player had 30 pins. There was a printing issue that prevented us from taking home the planes that day, but we were able to pick them up the next day, and they said they would mail cards to anyone who couldn't make it. They also enthusiastically requested feedback to improve the game mode for future conventions, which I appreciated. Afterwards, I had lunch at Connie's, a pizza restaurant in the building. It was far enough from the con floor to be quieter and calmer than the food carts. The food was similar quality-wise, but the portions were better. Also, I saw a Pepsi version of those Coca-Cola freestyle machines for literally the first time in my life. Around this time, I went to the first aid station for ibuprofen. because multiple days of sleep deprivation and junk food will give you a headache. The attendant was very nice. Next, I headed to Creator Central. I started with the cosplay section. There were so many awesome cosplays. It was a treat to see. Some of my favorite things that I saw were Avacyn's wings, the Mir Battlesphere, Proph's hand things, the Unluckiest Planeswalker's doll, and Hot Dog Fribblethorpe. I am fascinated by cosplay techniques, since I have so little comprehension of that craft. Thank you to everyone for answering my questions. The meet and greet section of Creator Central was also fun. They had a passport for collecting stamps, which was cool. I also used it to store the many cool tokens and stickers and cards that I was given. I wonder if anyone managed to get all 44 stamps. Again, everyone was super friendly. My favorite station was manned by My Hands Are Blank. 2 challengers had 1 minute to draw a random Orb the Spark Planeswalker. After looking at it for 5 seconds, my Vivian managed to win. I apologized to her. I also doodled a Grey Merchant. It turned out better than I thought it would, especially since I was drawing on a standing poster. I saw a kid do the drawing contest, and afterwards he asked if he could continue drawing. After receiving permission, he asked if he could draw Naruto specifically. It was a pretty good Naruto. I love that he's clearly spent a lot of time during that Naruto drawing and is always looking for an opportunity to bust it out. But the best part was that My Hands Are Blank, who is a very talented artist, gave the kid genuine advice for what to do if he wanted to become an artist. It was very sweet to see. I've definitely been inspired to have a booth of my own one day. Afterwards, I attended the second half of Mark Rosewater's 20 Best Mechanics of All Time panel. Oddly enough, seeing him do a drive-to-work style presentation felt stranger than directly talking to him, because I was so used to hearing the podcast without visuals in my car or on a run. This was followed by a brief gritty competition. That is not a joke. This kid was the clear victor. It was not even close. Up next was the 30 Years of Content and Commentary community panel. It also featured Mark Rosewater, alongside several content creators. This was the panel I was most looking forward to, and it did not disappoint. I love Magic history and meta reception and all media that catalogs both of those things. Watching a team of experts on the topic discuss it was super cool. For dinner, I had a spicy Chicago-style hot dog from Devil Dogs. It was the best hot dog I've had in my entire life. I have been converted. Sunday morning, I continued my routine of starting with Artist Alley. In total, I got signatures from 25 artists, including one on my official Saddest Karn Art magnet. I was prepared to get way fewer, so that was awesome. I have 2 critiques of the management of the alley, though. Firstly, Kaja Foglio was, in her words, left off the website by accident. Bird Maiden is one of my all-time favorite cards, so it was cool to be able to meet her, but I didn't bring the card to get signed since I didn't know she would be there. Secondly, 2 artists had to cancel their appearances. I completely understand that this sort of thing happens, but they were never removed from the website, and the alley staff member I talked to was not aware of their absence. I had to go to the information desk to confirm the situation. Next, I headed to the Black Lotus Lounge for breakfast. I picked up my plane chase cards and die, and made sure to say goodbye to all my new friends in case I didn't see them again. Afterwards, I attended my second ticketed activity, the Unknown event. There was some chaos as the event started. Apparently, the ticketed events were consistently overcrowded and chaotic, as more people attended the convention than was expected. This barely impacted me, but I felt it was worth saying. I'm glad the convention was so popular, but hopefully this was taken as a sign to expand the space and staff next time. Gavin Verhey was the face of the event and gave the directions. He was somewhat difficult to hear from where I was, but they passed out written directions to make up for this. The event was Commander Sealed with unknown cards. I've never done any Commander Sealed before,
So that was already exciting, and the unknown cards just made it better.
Actually, the unknown cards were especially important to me because I did not open any legendary creatures in my regular packs. I ended up building a fun Jund deck with the Duke of Midrange as my commander. As a special rule for the event, commanders were face down until you cast them for the first time each match. As always, my opponents were great. One of them was giving out Morfolk tokens. Another one of my opponents was also a recipient of that token, and they were just incredibly excited to receive it. It was awesome seeing such joy. In general, it was super cool, seeing how many countless, often overlooked elements of the game were somebody's favorite aspect of it. Throughout the weekend, for a future video, I asked over 60 Magic personalities what their favorite thing about Magic is. I loved hearing all the different answers, and the exercise was good for getting me out of my comfort zone to talk to as many people as I could. Afterwards, I painted a D&D model. I'd never done this before, and I wasn't very good at it, but it was quite relaxing. Next, I went and played some regular Commander with my friends. This was actually the only time I played Magic that weekend not as part of an organized event. It was nice to get a chance to just play casual Magic with my friends. During our game, a random person gave us 2/3 of a pizza. Apparently, the Connie's cart went from charging $9 for a slice to $8 for a pie as the con came to a close, and he only wanted 2 slices. This was a good representation of the spirit of camaraderie that was ever present throughout the convention. Yes, I did have pizza 3 times over 5 days, but we don't need to talk about that. During our game, a championship match was shown on the main screen. I have a pretty minimal understanding of tournament magic, but it was cool to see. After the game, I quickly went back to the prize wall to spend my remaining tickets. The line was long but quite fast moving. Most of the prizes were still in stock. I got a handful of set boosters. I gave one group the last 100 tickets they needed for a box and got a pack in return. After the main floors closed, I walked out with my friends and received a Fallout mask that has apparently been in the vault for many years. In the lobby, I chatted with my friends. This pleasant conversation with pleasant people was the perfect close to my con experience. That and someone stealing an Oko cardboard cutout. For dinner, I had taco maya. The burrito was average, but the chips and salsa were incredible. On Monday, I stored my luggage and headed out to explore Chicago a bit more. I ran into one of my friends whose flight had been postponed. We were able to hang out, which was great. We walked to Millennium Park to see the Bean with my The Bean plane chase card in tow. The real Bean was being refurbished, but was still fully visible. I enjoyed all the sculpture and architecture of the park. For lunch, we went to Ming Hin Cuisine, where I had some pretty good chicken fried rice. After a nice meal, my friend went to his flight, and I went to the Field Museum of Natural History. My time there was limited, but I enjoyed it. It felt more vibrant than most other natural history museums I've been to, with lots of color, immersive environments, and tactile elements. It was neat to see the museum that the fabled airport dinosaur foretold. Relatedly, the highlight of the museum for me was Sue the Tyrannosaurus Rex. At some point in my youth, I watched a documentary on her discovery and legal situation in science class, and it stuck with me ever since. It was like meeting a celebrity. With that, I headed back to the airport and saw the dinosaur one last time. We now had a much deeper understanding of each other. As this video indicates, my trip was incredible. I had a great time in Chicago. I'm glad I was able to fit in some local foods and take in aspects of your culture. You guys sure love jaywalking, huh? The weather was surprisingly good when I was there. Before I went, everyone was warning me I'd freeze to death, and I bought my first scarf for the trip. But it was an average of 50 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. Monday was downright warm. It did snow Friday night, but it was pretty light. However, one of my new friends is from California, and it was incredibly funny seeing him freeze whenever it went below 60 degrees. I'm sorry for laughing at your pain. In terms of the con itself, I had so much fun. There were some structural stumbles, but the event as a whole was great. I'm really revved up to go to more conventions now, and more magic events of various sizes. New perspectives gave me a truly once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As I said at the beginning, I've never done anything like this before. I don't know if I'll ever get the highest tier ticket to a con again. If I do, it won't be for a very long time, since I'm currently in grad school and I really struggle to spend money on myself. I got to do so many cool things at MagicCon. I interviewed Mark Rosewater. I interacted with a bunch of designers, artists, and content creators. I took photos with cosplayers and replicas. I played multiple different varieties of Magic. I attended interesting panels. I solved puzzles. I got free stuff. But most importantly, I met so many incredible people. Everyone was friendly, generous, and excited. It was an environment of pure joy. It was also a pretty diverse environment, which was great to see. One aspect of this that surprised me was just how many kids and teenagers were there with their parents. I think that's really great. In the lounge, I chatted a few times with a mother who was there with her daughter. It was really sweet seeing her supporting her daughter and her interests. To that woman, I hope me explaining how the disguise mechanic works strengthened you two's bond. Another time, I overheard a father telling his son how proud of him he was for getting out of his comfort zone that day. When I was younger, my dad took me to Phyrexicon, and I had a great time. I was so happy to see kids having similar experiences here. Heartwarming parenting wasn't limited to kids either. In the lounge, a man had to step away to answer a phone call from his mom in South Africa. Afterwards, he talked about how she had made him promise to take a bunch of photos for her, which he ended up appreciating. I also can't forego shouting out my own family and friends for their constant support and excitement on my behalf for this trip. Thank you to all of you. And also, thank you to every employee who worked on this event, including this good boy. You all did a great job. I'd especially like to again recognize our new Perspectives rep for being there for us 24/7. Also, thank you to you for watching. If you're one of the congoers who subscribed to my channel while I was there, thank you. And hello. And finally, as always, thank you to my patrons for supporting this channel.
Especially Dylan Malk, my first ever Karn Appreciator patron.
P.S. By watching this video, you have been subliminally Phyrexionized. I do not apologize for this.